Hi, everybody. I was just jamming to my countdown music like a normal human would. Are you building a workshop? Or maybe you've just started thinking about one because it's an awesome way to create a low barrier entry product that shows your smarts, shows what you know, but it also adds value, it educates people, and it gets them primed and ready to move on and solve that problem finally. Solve that problem that they've been wanting to solve for so long. You've given them the pieces of the pie in the workshop, but then you can also move forward and do those services for them. So workshops are a great low barrier entry product. And I happen to be doing one tomorrow for IAPD in Chicago, Soaring to New Heights. So if you're going to be there, hit me up, give me a comment, let me know that you're going to be there, and come visit my workshop. There's nothing not to love about a workshop. So tomorrow I'm speaking at the IAPD conference and facilitating a workshop. So I'm sharing my behind the scenes on that. On how I created my workshop from ideation to execution and all the tools I use to make it happen. And so you'll see exactly how it's made. I'm live right now, so comment with your questions. And if you're going to watch this during the replay, that's cool too. There's a link in the description where you can send me voice memos with your questions, and we'll bring them in on special episodes. So I'm super into that and starting to bring your voice into these episodes too. So I recorded my behind the scenes as I was building it out. So I will be right back and you will get your peek behind the curtain. Marketing. I'm Sarah Noel Block, and I teach small marketing departments that are tired of feeling overwhelmed and under-resourced how to build and manage an effective and efficient marketing strategy that works for them. You get expert marketing advice from someone who's been there, done that. Get ready, it's time to dig in. Hello, this is Sarah Noel Block, your host of Tiny Marketing Show, and today I am walking you through how I'm creating my first in-person workshop in 2 years. Goo. So this is what I'm going to do. First, I'm going to walk you through my process for creating that workshop. Then I'm going to tell you how I decided on my topic. And then what will I be covering in my workshop? Next, how will I create an interactive activity for this workshop? And then last, how can you get involved? Very exciting stuff. And I'm going to walk you through it. It's going to be a beautiful thing. Are you ready? Let's go. All right, friends. Step one, how did I decide on my topic for my workshop? So when you're doing an in-person workshop or an in-person presentation, don't try something new. Do not start from scratch. Go with an old classic that you know is effective, you know your audience resonates with, and that will be really engaging. It's not the time to start testing new things. If you want to test something new, start with a live stream. Do something micro. You can test out new ideas with social media posts, see how engaged people are with that topic. Live streams, once you see that there's a little bit of energy with it, webinars. But when it comes to in-person workshops, you don't want to try something new. So what I'm doing is I'm going with one of my classic webinars that people already love, but I've upgraded a little bit so it's even better. I'm going to walk you through my topic and what I've done. So my specific topic is on marketing with a small team and a small budget. And this is for a workshop that will be with, I will be talking to small marketing departments in park districts. So that's my audience. And what I did is I went through an old webinar presentation that I had used that actually started originally as a live stream. And it was pretty popular, so I made it into a more in-depth webinar, and now it's going to be a workshop. So I just keep repurposing that content and just making it a little bit bigger every time. So here it is. Some elements that I included in my workshop were a poll everywhere to create that engagement. Even though we're in person, we can still have these technology engagement points. So I have some poll everywhere slides. I have an agenda so people know exactly what to expect from my presentation. And then I went through all of my slides and I started thinking about what could be missing. This is a workshop, so there's going to be elements that are interactive, and there's going to be an activity that goes with it so people can, try on what I'm presenting. So what I did was I started to build out these points a little bit more, thinking, how can I take this one step further? For example, this was originally my first slide in the presentation, explaining that you need a piece of core content to start repurposing and really get the most from your small team and your small budget. But then I was like, do they know what to talk about in this core content? So they might not. I went ahead and added a couple more slides on how to create content themes and content buckets, because that will help them graduate into that first step of creating core content with repurposing. Okay, so I did that, and then I added another poll everywhere, because you really need to decide what your core content can be, what's going to be that thing that you repurpose all over the place. So my recommendation is video. Video is the best thing to do first because there's so many ways that you can repurpose it. However, you also, you might not have the capacity to do video. It takes a little bit more time. So you have a couple different options. You can start with a blog, you can start with a podcast, you can start with different types of video. But you definitely can get more from video than anything else. Okay, so then I moved on to these other slides that have consistently been in my presentation. And then I thought, how can I take distribution one step further? Because distribution is just so much bigger than a lot of people think about. When you're thinking about content marketing, you're thinking about creation, audience research, but nobody's going to see any of that without a good distribution plan. So I added a couple extra slides on distribution, syndication, how to get your content in front of all of the right people. And then these are some classic slides from the original webinar. And actually, you can go to this webinar that I'm showing you right now on my website. So it's available, the original webinar. And then I thought, Sarah, you can do more. You can repurpose more than what you talked about in that original webinar. So I added micro video in there. You can take those 30-minute videos and cut them down into, 20-second videos for a reel, all the way down to like 1 to 3 minutes, where you could have little micro pieces of content that still live on YouTube, but are a little bit quicker to consume, little bite-sized pieces. So micro video got added from my original webinar. And so did audio-only content. I just didn't think about it at the time, but audio-only content is huge. So right now I am repurposing my live streams into a podcast. And you can also create it into audiograms if you don't have a podcast or you're not interested in having a podcast. You can do audiograms and little bite-sized pieces of audio content from those videos. You just have to download the wave. And then I created the workshop element, which is the interactive piece. And that is going to be huge. So when I was looking at this, when I was working on this presentation, I was going back and forth between my workbook and this presentation. If I added something to the workbook, I had to make sure that my presentation included the pieces to be able to give them the foundation to do that activity. All right, now I'm going to show you how I created the workbook. Okay, the workbook. I created this in Canva, very easy to do. And I made everything really interactive because even though it's an in-person workshop, all of the elements are going to be digital. We still have a pandemic going on, and I'll be wearing a mask during this workshop, and everybody will be only using digital handouts. So I made this an interactive workbook, which is nice because I can also reuse this workshop for a virtual workshop. So these are all clickable links to get to the different pages of the workshop. I added cheat sheets, so it's a little bit easier to understand all of your options when you're filling out this workbook. The cheat sheets included tools and budgets. And then this was my husband's idea, who works in education. He said, you need to have a couple options, a couple scenarios that anyone can do. Let's say somebody's at my workshop and they're not actually in marketing yet. They just want to be in marketing. They aren't going to have anything to do if I based my workshop completely off of their own situation. So what did I do? I created scenarios for that they can use to start practicing the elements that I'm teaching in this workshop. So in this one, I have a budget in there. They'll see who the audience is, how big the team is, and then they can start practicing what I teach. What would your core content be? How would you repurpose it? What would be your budget for repurposing? How could you distribute this content? And how would you manage the entire process? Because repurposing, it's not like a super easy process. There's a ton of different elements that are thrown up in the air. So you need to have a great system in place to be able to do it seamlessly, especially when you have that small team and small budget. So I gave 2 scenarios to be able to practice that if you weren't already in a marketing department. And then the third allows them to do it themselves. So in this, they're going to take all of their own marketing department information and create it themselves. So this is a piece that I added after the fact. I added creating your themes and your subtopics for all of your content, because originally I was just having them choose their core content, repurposing plans, distribution. But if you don't know what to create your content on, it's not really going to be helpful, is it? No. So I created this section where they're going to identify 4 core themes and subtopics for each of those themes. And then a little CTA at them that's clickable and allows them to go to my contact page and book time with me. So that is how I created the workbook. And it was really super simple. So I created it in Canva, and then I used PDF Fly to make it a fillable form so they can fill it out on their iPads or laptops, whatever they're using. And it'll work well for in-person or virtual. Now, how can you get involved? If you go to sarahnoelblock.com/Tiny Marketing Show, you can submit your own questions. If you have a question about how I created my own workshop, you can go there and send me a voice memo, and then your question will be heard in a future episode. And I'm excited to hear from you. So don't forget to reach out to me and send your voice memos so I can answer your questions with our voices in sync. All right, bye. Thank you for joining Tiny Marketing. I help tiny marketing departments create consistent content that builds trust with their audience. Book done for you content marketing at sarahnoelblock.com. Don't forget to follow the podcast on your favorite podcast app. And if you're watching this on YouTube or LinkedIn, make sure to hit the subscribe or follow button. See you next time, friends. Thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with me today. If you enjoyed this, then you can show some love to my show and the algorithm by liking and commenting. Whether you're watching this live or on the replay, it will be helpful. And if you liked this but prefer podcasts, you can listen to this show on all podcast apps. I want to send a big, fat, juicy kiss to everyone who listens. We've been publishing the podcast now for about 6 weeks, and we have made it into the top 50% of podcast downloads. Oh, hi, Adriel. Thank you. Thank you so much for the support. Our next podcast drops this Sunday, so don't miss it. It's on copywriting that converts, and it's showcasing our interview with Josh Garofalo. To find it, just search the Tiny Marketing Show on all podcast apps. I'll see you next time. Thank you so much.